I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? As we're here for the first time, what brings you here? Saw a couple hands. Yeah, you got your hand in there. Say again?
Curiosity.
Of or about?
Buddhism.
Do you know much?
No,
Nothing.
very little.
Do you want to lead? Is that a no?
I'll let you take this one.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it. Well, glad you're here. Yeah. Other hands. Yeah.
I live like a 10-minute walk away. I have cousins and uncles who are Nichiren Daishonin Buddhists, but that's about it. And I took a class in college. And, just wanted to strengthen my spiritual practice.
Nice. Well, glad you're here. Yeah. Could I translate that to you just want to be happier?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounded nice, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's kind of at the foundation of why we're all here, you know? We just want to be happier. But we put kind of Buddhist terms, spirituality, religion around it, and a lot of times that label itself is what ruins it. You know? We just want to be happier. So I'm glad you're here to deepen your spiritual practice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other hands? First time? Yeah? What brings you here?
Well, curiosity. I've been reading throughout the years about, I saw this and I went, perfect.
Nice.
Here I am. I want to learn more.
Great. Glad you're here. Anybody else? First time here? Want to share why? Or one or two who keep showing up for some crazy reason? Why? Why show up? Yeah.
Still suffering.
Still suffering. Yeah. You might scare away the new people who think this is going to work. Sorry, dude. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
They say Israel loves company, so it's a good place to go talk about it.
You're not helping us at all. Yeah. It's true, though, that whole misery loves company thing, for those virtually who didn't hear it, who are suffering at home, you know. There is, I think, some joy in going through this crazy journey, you know, with others. Something beautiful about bringing together a bunch of relatively unhappy people and figuring out how can we be happy. Yeah, Allison.
I came into this temple December of 2022, and it's changed my life so much that anytime a friend mentions, "Hey, I'm curious about it," I like to bring them here. So I brought a friend here today.
Okay, I'm the first time.
Now that she outed you were trying to hide. Well, we know what brought you here, but what was behind that when you mentioned curiosity?
I described to her, my brain, my thoughts are just like a puzzle that you know to pull it all together.
Yeah. What if you didn't pull it all together and you just stopped worrying about it being an absolute mess?
I'd be uncomfortable with that.
You'd be uncomfortable with that?
If it was a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be hard for you. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. You know. All right, so we'll start with the meditation practice. For those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. There's a chat box on your screen. A couple things to tell you before we begin. For those who might be brand new or maybe sitting here for the first time, nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Again, if you are new, you're not trying to shut your mind off. You're not trying to think nothing. You're not going to go blank. Your mind will continue to race the entire time we sit here. There's nothing wrong with the racing mind. The challenge is we fight and run with the racing mind. So I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought, to remind you to come back to the present moment. Most important with the practice, don't expect anything from this. We're just going to sit and breathe. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or lap. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means you need to move. I will guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, you'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from your practice, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, distressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment and learning to be with life as it arises. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation, Buddhist practice don't fix that. It helps you become aware of your life being a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess so then you can actually make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do in each moment. We spend so much time focused on what everybody else says and thinks and does. Wishing they did this, wishing they did that. Wondering why they did this, wondering why they did that. So much time focused on the actions of others. And I'm not suggesting that the actions of others aren't important, nor that we should ignore them. What I'm suggesting is that you spend equal, if not more, time focused on your thoughts and your words and your actions. Because that's what you have control over. And your thoughts and your words and your actions change your life and the life of those around you. Ironically, so many people want to change so much about the world, but spend very little time trying to change themselves. It's a lot easier to blame everybody else for all the problems. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything outside of us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, things get simpler, easier. And with that mind, the mind of love, the mind of compassion, the mind of wisdom, then we can create a kinder, gentler world. But if we're filled with anger and hatred, not doing too much good. And when you're filled with anger and hatred, the only one who's suffering is you. And then everybody else that you bring that anger and hatred to. So this practice initially is for us. And then we begin to see how that impacts the world around us. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, for those joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. Feel free, there's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to say hello. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box. I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. We'll use the rest of our brief time for that.
Other than moving away, how can I practice unattachment with my family? That when things aren't going smoothly.
So I'll paraphrase that or repeat that for those virtually that didn't hear it. You said, other than moving away, I love how you started it out with that. How can you practice unattachment, as you say, with family when things aren't going? Did you say your way or just the way you want it? Or both will apply here? I'm going to get you to answer this question. Say again? They're not going the way you want it. Okay, great. So I just wanted to clarify. Your question is about how do you practice unattachment when your family isn't doing what you want them to. So, sorry, did I misspeak? So first off, just for clarification, I always suggest anytime the teachings around attachment come up, and knowing you and knowing you're a long time around here, I understand the essence of what you're saying, but it's mainly for people who might be brand new to this practice. Instead of saying unattachment or unattached, some people often say detached. It's the actual technical term in Buddhism translates to non-attachment. So it's not a cutting off of, it's not like to me, and again, I'm just talking from an English language perspective, when I hear unattached or detached, it sounds like we're severing or cutting off. In reality, the teaching of non-attachment is actually love. It's endless, boundless love and compassion. So what you're actually asking is, how do you practice boundless love to your family members that aren't doing what you want? And the response is to continue to practice love and compassion because they're suffering. They're struggling. I didn't know the answer to this, but I'll play it out anyways for everybody else. But have you ever done things in your life that other people didn't want?
Oh,
I'm sure once, like in 1982, At one time you did stuff that people didn't want you to do. And when we often do things that others don't want us to do or that cause pain and suffering in other people's lives, how are we feeling in that moment that led us to do that? If we do things that harm others, what is that usually saying about us?
We're usually struggling.
We're struggling. We're suffering. We're angry. We're sad. We're depressed. We're anxious. We're miserable. We're, pondering our whole life. We're whatever it is, we are suffering. And when we are suffering, we tend to do things that create conditions to cause suffering in other people's lives. Now, again, I know you know this, but other people, your family, for example, as you mentioned, who are doing things to cause you suffering, that has nothing to do with you. That is simply an expression of their pain and their misery. So the practice of non-attachment, the practice of love, is to understand that while you are the lovely beneficiary of their pain and suffering, it's their pain. Their anger, hatred, resentment, frustration, actions towards you are not coming from a place of love and kindness and compassion. They're coming from a place of greed and anger and ignorance, which the Buddha said is the root cause of our suffering. So this is not an easy practice. And you could ask this question truly every week for the next 20 years and still work on it. I think the important piece to understand is it's practice. It's a work in progress. It's understanding that when people in your family are doing things that cause you pain and suffering, the teaching, the practice is to open up your heart and your mind and understand that they're suffering. And it's not about you. Now, always, it's always important to have boundaries in place, safety in place. I'm not suggesting that as people are doing things that are causing, physical, mental, emotional pain in your life, that means you must sit by and deal with it or take it or carry it, right? Every person has their own experience with that. And I always, with kind of a very big asterisk, remind people that if you're in unhealthy, toxic relationships that are causing physical, mental, emotional pain, non-attachment and love doesn't mean you sit there and continue to be abused. So removing ourselves from unhealthy situations are also a very, I find, beautiful practice. But we can't always remove ourselves from a situation. Like you said, other than moving away, which you're not going to do in this situation, you get to practice love over and over and over again for their suffering. Yeah.
So what if those people aren't unhappy and suffering, but gloating and winning and happy because they won?
So are you defining the fact that they're gloating and winning and happy as your interpretation of that means they're actually not suffering, or that they're just gloating because they're wonderful, happy people?
I don't think that they feel that they're suffering.
I didn't ask if you thought that they feel that they're suffering.
Right. Maybe they are.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We're great at spinning things that work in our intellectual minds, When people are winning and gloating, as somebody who knows winning and gloating all too well for the first 25 years of my life, it was really just an expression of anger, sadness, depression, that needed people to see the winning and gloating to make myself feel better about myself. I think the Buddha, Siddhartha, it was his name, they called him the Buddha, which means the awakened one. I think he was a pretty smart dude. And I think he understood the way the nature of our mind works as well as anybody, because that's all his teachings are addressing. And I believe the teaching that says we all suffer. So I think it's safe to say that we might not perceive them as suffering, we might just perceive them how we want, but they're suffering too. Where the need to gloat wouldn't be there, Yeah.
The one I have a hard time is anger, because I was raised supposed to be nice and sweet, so my tendency has been to run or to stuff it, where I figure it's not very effective. How do I get into compassion when I realize, okay, something, I've been triggered, and I don't want to, react on there someone else. So how do I, and just sitting with it is kind of hard, so how do I get from anger to compassion?
Yeah. So the question virtually for those who didn't hear it is, how do I get from anger to compassion? There's a beautiful children's book by Thich Nhat Hanh called An's Anger. It's A-N-H-S, Anger. And beautiful illustrations, and it's like, I'm going to kind of spoiler alert here. It's only like 15 pages, so it probably won't take you too long to read, and the letters are big, my favorite. And it has cool illustrations. But An's Anger, it's like this monster, kind of cactus, prickly plant thing that turns into a beautiful flower. And so what you're really asking is, how do you go from being this angry monster into being this beautiful flower filled with compassion? And there's two ways to look at this. For me, the first way is to look at what you're asking about, I'm feeling, is in that moment where you're triggered. As you said, triggered. So in that moment, that's the first part. The second question is, or the second response is where I'll start, which is, one, it's not easy, and you know that. So I talked about this a lot recently, but very often if we have anger over a situation, the idea, the teachings, the practice is to pour compassion into it immediately. That's not always simple. Now, if you're angered towards something for 30 years and I say, just have compassion for it, that's probably just going to piss you off even more. So the practice, one way, is to cultivate compassion in as many areas of your life as possible that have absolutely nothing to do with the thing you're angry about. Because then what you're doing is you're actually kind of, you're watering the seeds, as they say in Buddhism, you're watering the seeds of compassion towards everywhere. Maybe not towards that. So instead of 80%, I'm making up numbers as I make up everything, but instead of 80% of you feeling angry towards this thing and 20% of you having compassion, you're now kind of shifting the scales a little bit. You're going to say, I'm going to find more things in my life to do where I practice compassion. So more of your life is spent with just endless acts of kindness and compassion. So when you are triggered, you have practiced being in a place of compassion more often. It's easier to find it. You ever driven somewhere and not knowing how to get there and gotten completely lost?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, especially before GPS stuff. And then you go there 10 times, now you know how to get there. We don't always know how to get to compassion because we don't practice it. We only seek it when we're pissed off and angry as a kind of an antidote or solution to coming out of the anger. Does that make sense?
But how do you practice? I know I hear about compassion, but how do you practice it? You just sit with what is, or?
No. I'm talking, well, are you talking, the first part is just go do good things.
Okay.
I'm not talking about sitting with what's making you angry. You're already looking for the solution. I'm splitting this up. And I'm saying the way to deal with the trigger is to do preventative measures so the trigger doesn't happen.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The second part, which your second question jumped to about what do I do with it, in that moment, yes. When you see anger, you feel anger, sit. Or stand or walk. But what's the last thing we want to do when we feel anger? React. So while you're spending the next few years cultivating endless compassion every single day of your life, and you're still triggered every single day of your life, in that moment of being triggered, just stop. Close your eyes, if you're not driving or whatever, safely, and take 3 deep breaths. Don't act or react. Yeah.
You were talking about Thich Nhat Hanh, and you talked about, I can't remember the exact term, but form of engaged.
Engage, yeah.
So many of us, we become engaged in, trying to do the right thing or in changing how the world is from a very deep-seated point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what sort of ignites us to act
Yeah.
in the world. So I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit about not having a point of view and still
have a point of view, but practice non-attachment to your point of view. So Thich Nhat Hanh, you've heard me say this before. So the question, for those virtual who didn't hear it, your question was, a lot of you who practice engaged Buddhism, as Thich Nhat Hanh taught, to change the world, and I want to come back to that in a minute, come from a place of a very deep-seated view. And so your question is around, how do you not have that view?
Well, just become a little bit less attached to your
Right.
saying.
Yes. So Thich Nhat Hanh also says nirvana, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. Now, when I heard that teaching, of course, I had a view. I say, well, do I agree with that or not? And then I'm like, dude, 3 seconds in, this is Thich Nhat Hanh. Who am I going to argue with, right? I've argued with a lot of people. He's not one I would argue with. So if Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Zen master, Zen priest, Zen poet, engaged Buddhist activist who walked along Martin Luther King, in his fight for social justice, racial inequality, the guy knew what he was talking about. And he said, nirvana, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. What that taught me is, I have my views, and I'm going to continue to fight. But in that fight, in having that view, in engaged Buddhism, I'm not going to hate every single person who has a different view than me. And that's, if you're honest with yourself, the people that you said deep-seated, and you said change the world. It's amazing how we roam around thinking we're going to change the world. Just change your life. And the few people around you. Start there. But we often want to change things on the other side of the world that, in reality, at this moment in time, we have very little to zero impact about. Impact to do anything about. Very little. Yet it'll make 90% of your day miserable. Meanwhile, you just walk past 50 people on the street, and I'm speaking to everybody, I'm just looking at you. Meanwhile, we just walk by 50 people on the street who are unhoused, unsheltered, have no food, angry, pissed off, strung out, addicted, and miserable, as are the people in our lives. But we can't focus on them because we want to change the world a million miles away.
That's when I said change the world, I sort of meant something a little bit.
I'm not even talking to you anymore. I'm just looking at you. Yeah. If you haven't all figured it out by now, when I speak, I'm only looking at you. I'm talking to every single person in this room and, our 8 people watching online. Right? I don't answer questions directly. You know that. But the reality is you have a deep-seated view that you are, back to your question, you are attached to. And when you're attached to that view, and you think your view is what?
Right.
Correct, right. And so that means everybody else's view is what? Wrong. So all those other people that you think have the wrong views, they're sitting in some other class, some other program, some other therapy session, some other meditation thing, and they're complaining right now about your view. And they're pissed off at you. Non-attachment is having absolute endless love and respect for the people that cause harm, in your view. Because they don't think they're causing harm. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, doesn't mean you have to take their side, doesn't mean you have to start doing what they're doing. But can you sit down with the people who are causing tremendous pain and suffering, or are you just going to carry anger and hatred? Because while you carry that anger and hatred, you know who's getting burned? You. And be very careful here, because a lot of people will justify, oh, that anger and hatred is what drives me. That anger and hatred is what will give you a heart attack and kill you, truly. So be engaged. Fight all you want for what you believe in without anger and hatred in your heart, because that anger and hatred has just destroyed you. I mean, yes, we got a lot of great music out of anger and hatred, but, yeah, what else? Yeah.
You said right view multiple times, but the first point of the Eightfold Path is right view.
Yeah.
So what does right view mean?
Yeah. So around the Eightfold Path, and to kind of back up a little bit for those who are new, the teaching of the Eightfold Path comes from the Four Noble Truths. So to run through it in like 60 seconds, and you can all Google this for free. But the very first teaching of the Buddha was the Four Noble Truths. He said life is filled with suffering. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. Doesn't mean all of life sucks. It doesn't mean everything in life is traumatic. There's heavy suffering, trauma, loss, things like that. And then there's simple things, getting your sandwich made the wrong way. Somebody cut you off on the freeway. Your coffee didn't have enough pumps of whatever you wanted in it. Right? This is also suffering. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. Second noble truth is the cause. Greed, anger, ignorance. He said we overcome greed with the practice of generosity. We overcome anger with compassion. We overcome ignorance with wisdom. So this is the practice, the cultivation of generosity, compassion, and wisdom. The third noble truth is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering, which again, Thich Nhat Hanh says, you want to not suffer, don't have views. Don't attach to your views. Be free from your views. He didn't say don't have them. Be free from them, meaning don't attach to them. Defend them, fight for them, but don't attach to them, because if you're attached to them, then you're going to suffer. And if you're suffering and angry and pissed off, you're going to have a hard time changing anything. Right? And the fourth noble truth is the ending, or the path that leads to the ending of suffering. And this is the nature of your question. Eightfold Path, correct views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Again, all of that on Google for free. So your question on right. One thing is with the translation, often you'll see in English, you'll say right view, correct view. And this gives us kind of the feeling that, well, then there's an incorrect view. There's a wrong view. So in this fundamental basic Buddhist teaching, it's often translated in English as this is right. And we are so conditioned to think, well, then there's obviously wrong teachings out there. So one way to look at this is the Buddha also said there's 84,000 paths to awakening, right? The Buddha did not address specifically the teachings of Jesus Christ. You know why? He lived 500 years before Christ. So often people say, well, what did the Buddha think about Jesus? I mean, that's a simple one. Nothing. He wasn't alive yet, right? The historical view of kind of from scholarly perspective around Jesus, with regards to Buddhism, is they say that Jesus was a fully enlightened Bodhisattva, meaning he was born to literally liberate all beings from suffering. So the reason I bring that up is when you look at the word correct or right in these teachings, I think if we all lived the path of Jesus, we would all suffer less. I think that's a right view. I think that's a beautiful view. I think that's a correct view. Right? With regards very specifically to the teachings, when you look at what is the view talking about, it's understanding that this practice of attachment to self and overcoming attachment to self. This practice of putting loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity into our lives. This practice of understanding that the nature of suffering comes from our attachment to views. This is what the view is talking about. It's not so much about left versus right, good versus bad, up versus down. It's understanding that if we engage in the world in a way where we're not so focused on thinking I'm the most important person, and then yes, it is using the body of these teachings, looking at our karma, our actions, what we bring to the world. If we have the view that if we do these things, we can suffer less, and we can create suffering, less suffering for those around us. And I think one thing I've kind of played with over the years, and I still don't talk about it this way, because the predominant translation is really correct view or right view. But one of the things that I wrestle with in my head is or not even wrestle with, but that I explore around right view is, for me, it's healthy. What's a healthy view? You know, what's going to make me and those around me healthy versus what's going to make me unhealthy? If my life is filled with greed and anger and ignorance, that's going to make me incredibly unhealthy. You know, it's just going to feed my ego, my pride. You know, God knows I got enough of that already. So, yeah.
Isn't there also a portion to right view or right understanding where the Buddha did not want people to blindly follow anything that he said? And for them to go out and try things,
Yes.
and if it didn't work for them, to abandon it.
Yes, correct, exactly. For those who didn't hear, the comment was, isn't there a part to right view where the Buddha said, you know, don't believe it, you know, in essence said, don't believe it just because I'm saying it, was what you're saying. Try it. And if it works for you, continue. If not, abandon it. So he really wanted his, initially the disciples, you know, and then just kind of carried on with the teachings and every kind of more modern day, you know, to me, great teacher, you know, the nuns, the monks, the wonderful teachers that we've had for the last 2,000 plus years are really embodying that same thing, that, hey, try these things. If practicing loving kindness and compassion works for you in your life, then great. If it makes you more miserable, then abandon it. You know? So, yeah, the Buddha wasn't concerned about people being Buddhist. Yeah.
I just look at it, the right view, as like riding a ship.
Ah.
And so I picture it in my head like just trying to turn the ship towards smooth sailing.
Yeah, smooth sailing, you know, a path. To me, it's the Eightfold Path, so it's a path. And the thing about, and some people will debate this, but for me, the Eightfold Path, the way I was taught it, the way I learned it, what just makes logical sense to me, which is my view, which is clearly not right or wrong, it's just mine, is that, yes, it is a path. And if your view, to me, the Eightfold Path goes in order. If your view is not correct or right or healthy or righting the ship, as you say, then everything else is going to follow that. So if your view is that, you know, I'm more important than everybody else, then your thoughts, because the next on the Eightfold Path is thought, speech, action. So if your view is that I'm the most important person in the world and nobody else matters, then all of my thoughts and speech and action are going to follow that view. So the view is it's really important to come from that, again, for now, this healthy view. What else? Yeah.
It's interesting. Since I've been coming here, I've been feeling a lot more compassionate towards people, which is a very hard lesson for me to learn. My mom, she had dementia, and for the last week or two, she declined my sister and brother thin. I'm so worried about Paula. She called me up every day, and she crying, and she said she needs help, but she won't tell me what is going on. And I'm thinking, oh, that's not her talking, that's the dementia.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I I feel very compassionate towards her because I'm thinking, here is this 95-year-old lady who has dementia, and she is so worried about her youngest daughter. And I don't think I would have felt like that before I came here. I think I would have been angry and frustrated.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's interesting how coming here turned me around.
Beautiful. So just to paraphrase for those who didn't hear virtually, that since you've been coming here and observing your 95-year-old mother who has dementia and has been yelling and your sister's calling you? Yeah. Sister's calling to complain, and your brother. So she's yelling at them. Sister and brother are calling you to complain. And since coming here, you've really cultivated compassion and being able to just kind of be with the situation and not get angry. And that's hard. It's incredibly difficult to have compassion in a situation where we're watching people so close to us really, really suffer and struggle. And understanding, as you said, that it's not your mother, it's the dementia. Not easy. So keep on keeping on. Yeah. What else? Yeah, exactly. Aren't we all? Yeah. One more before we close.
So with right view, one of my teachers used to say, right view is thinking not self, only mind.
Yeah.
Everything we experience is just mind.
Just mind.
Wonder if you could speak to that a little.
Yeah, so the comment was that one of your teachers used to say that right view was everything you say or everything you do being mind and not about the self.
Everything you experience.
Everything you experience, sorry, thank you. That your teacher was saying that everything you experience is not self, it's your mind. So, so to comment on that briefly as we close, is that there's actually, you may be familiar with it, but a school of Buddhism called Yogacara, which is known as the mind-only school of Buddhism. And briefly, to touch on this idea of non-self in Buddhist practice is that, especially for those who've never heard this, non-self, kind of like non-attachment, can kind of be a little bit misleading because it makes it sound as if non-self means like, well, I'm not here, right? Or that I don't exist. So I exist. I am here. I just exist completely differently from how and who I actually am. Jeff is just some name people gave me. Jeff is not who I am. However, you all view me and judge me and label me and talk about me and define me, also not who I am. And so this attachment to a sense of self that we have is what creates so much of our suffering. Really the heart of Buddhist teachings is that we suffer, the greatest attachment is to that sense of self. Now, if we come from a place of non-self and just from mind, ideally an enlightened, awakened mind that is not craving, that is not desirous, that is not angry, that is not greedy, which only arises from the sense of self, then yes, all we are is a series of causes and conditions that occurs. Thich Nhat Hanh's a great quote around, all I am is my actions. And so we just observe and see and experience our actions and other people's actions. But what we tend to do as these unenlightened people is we label, we judge, we put them in a box, we define, and we do that, I think, in the greatest way with ourselves. Anyone in this room ever think they're not good enough, or they're not this enough, they're not that enough? I mean, it's your entire lives. It's what got us all here on a Saturday at 11 o'clock, But so the practice of no mind, or of no self, is coming from that place of just a pristine, clear mind. Sounds nice, huh? If you get there first, will you tell me how to do it? Thanks. All right, so I'll close on that. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right. A few announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, various people leading from different Buddhist traditions. Every Thursday at 4:30, we do, I think, one of the best practices around here. That's a food redistribution program. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the street. So anytime you think your life sucks and you lack gratitude and appreciation, feed people sleeping on a sidewalk, and it tends to put things into perspective. And if it doesn't work, keep doing it till it does. Other than that, we have a half day of silence the first Saturday of every month. So if 20 minutes of silence is absolute torture for you, then I strongly recommend you try it for 4 hours. It's phenomenal to my knowledge. Most people have lived after that experience. It's not 4 hours straight. It's 20-minute meditations that get broken up with a 5-minute break. And there's also a walking meditation and a cleaning meditation. So that's the first Saturday of every month. Otherwise, we have a special guest, a Sri Lankan monk, coming on, I believe it's Monday, March 30th. He'll be here on Monday night at 7 o'clock. Bhante Ananda, he'll be coming down from Los Angeles area. But if you've never seen any of the Sri Lankan monks that we've had over the years, they're special. So I think it just got posted, but I think that's on Monday night the 30th. So thank you all for being here. Buddha Fear is there if you need anything. Appreciate you all, and good luck.